Hello everyone, welcome to PAX, welcome to the Paramount Theatre. Rich Hagan alongside Ian Duke from Inside R&D. Welcome along Ian to the desk. We're going to talk in blistering fashion about the Eldritch Moon draft archetypes. Now, this is a format that is very well known. People who've chosen to have done any number of drafts on Magic Online. So as we work through these archetypes, I'm going to ask you for a sense of where the archetypes have settled, whether these are premier color pairs that everyone's trying to get, or that are traps, or that people are trying to get out of because the competition's too fierce, or whether they're just a color pair that don't quite make the grade. So we'll work our way through, and we're going to begin with the ally color pair. So why don't we take a look at white, blue spirits to get us going. So white, blue spirits, well, the clue is in the naming.
Yeah, this is sort of your traditional defend the ground and attack with flyers deck. There are a couple cards that care about the spirit creature type, but mostly it's just sort of playing straightforward Magic, defend the ground, get in with flyers, a little bit of tempo.
What do we mean by blink them? We've put that in quotes there. What is blinking?
So there are certain cards that can remove a creature from the battlefield and then return it to the battlefield, and those combine really well with creatures that have entered the battlefield effects like Apothecary Geist.
Okay, and that happens straight away. So the blink is, in a sense, blink and you'll miss it.
That's
because
right.
It's like, gone and here we are again. All right, so that's white, blue spirits. A good archetype, somewhere in the middle?
I'd say it's in the middle of the pack.
All right, that's white, blue archetype. So next up, we go to blue, black. Let's talk about zombies.
The Zombies deck is slow, as zombies on Innistrad are. It's a little bit more of a controlling deck. You're seeking to prolong the game and get value out of your graveyard by recurring your zombies over and over again.
Overall value for this one?
I'd say this one is lower on. This is more of an archetype that people go into if they open a bomb rare like Gisa and Geralf.
Okay, and is it hard to play as well because you are, like graveyard to a lot of players is not an area of, not a zone of the battlefield that we pay a lot of attention to?
You definitely need to pay more attention to your graveyard, both in how you build your deck and in how you're playing the games.
Okay, so that's blue-black. Let's keep black, and we'll move on to black-red as we head round the color wheel. And this is a deck certainly that I historically like very much. I like black-red aggressive decks, and Vampires is certainly that in.
It is. So this is an aggressive deck. It's based around the vampire creature type, but also the madness mechanic. Those two things sort of go hand in hand. So you want to attack with early creatures, back them up with removal spells, and wherever possible, get value out of your madness cards.
Oftentimes within R&D, you will switch things up with the archetypes. So black-red in one set will no longer be the same fundamental archetype. But this time around, I think it was 9 of the 10 archetype pairs stayed the same. So black-red, still Vampires as it was in triple Shadows over Innistrad.
Yeah, and I think for that reason, this is an archetype that people do actually look for in this draft format.
Right, so part of that is familiarity then, just from having continued on from the previous format.
It's familiarity, but also consistency of theme between the two sets.
Okay, neat stuff. So that's black-red. Let's take a look as we carry on round. We go to red-green, and we howl because it's werewolves.
So this is a pretty straightforward, again, aggressive deck, but it's going a little bit higher on the curve. You've got bigger red and green creatures, and it uses werewolves from both sets. Now, the werewolves in each set sort of have a different mechanical identity. The werewolves, of course, from Shadows over Innistrad will transform when a spell isn't cast this turn. The werewolves from Eldritch Moon all have mana activation to sort of manually transform them whenever you want. And those two things actually work really, really well together because you can take a turn off from casting a spell, pay mana to transform your Eldritch Moon werewolf, and then all of your Shadows werewolves will also transform.
It said on there that there are more instants and things with flash to help you with that transformation. When you put more instants into a set, does that make it fundamentally a more complicated, limited environment?
It definitely makes it more skill testing. There
Right.
are more things that you need to play around, that you have to anticipate what your opponent might have, and there are just more things happening at instant speed which can complicate combat or complicate the opponent's turn.
All right, so we move on around the color wheel. We've got one more archetype to show you in the friendly color pairs. If you like the allies, it's green, white, and it's humans.
Yeah, this is also an aggressive deck. It's going a little bit wider, meaning it's getting lots of creatures, but they're a little bit smaller. There are some synergies with equipment, so human creatures that say, I get better when I'm equipped, or equipment that does better on human creatures, so you can look for those synergies as well. And this is an archetype that was very, very popular and at the head of the pack in Shadows only limited, but it's lost a little bit of value with the addition of Eldritch Moon, just as kind of things shift around and bounce out a little bit.
Right, because you are down to just one pack of Shadows over Innistrad. So where you're used to, particularly a deck like that responds very well to commons and uncommons. And particularly there, when you've only got one pack and it's at the end, it really does shift the balance there. So now we go into our enemy color pairs, if you will. So let's look at white, black, and we're going to take a look at tokens. I love this archetype.
Yeah, this is a really fun archetype in general. There are some synergies where you're getting lots of token creatures like 1/1 spirits, and then seeking to pump them up in various ways. Borrowed Grace is a card that comes to mind there. Just giving your whole team, plus power and attacking with lots of small creatures.
And anytime you can incorporate the words sacrificial fodder into a deck, well, then that's clearly marvelous. So that's white-black tokens. What about blue-red? We call it spells matter, and they really do, because without the spells, this deck is the potential for a train wreck.
That's right, and when we say spells, we mean specifically instants and sorcery spells, as well as creatures with prowess triggering off of any non-creature spell. You really want to load up your deck with lots of instants and sorceries, and that means actually going down lower on your creature count. So you might only play, say, 12 or 13 creatures in your deck and fill up the rest with other spells.
Now, I won't mention the player who said this because that would be sort of proprietary information, but I was really interested yesterday during interviews. Someone said, that is the archetype that you draft if you must 3-0. So at the bottom table tomorrow, if there are people at, let's say, 2 and 5 or 3 and 4 who feel I need to 3-0 my draft, certainly one player in particular has said, look, this is the archetype. If you can get it, that totally, it just plays unfair magic. The blue-red deck, the good version of that, just more or less unbeatable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if you're not fighting for this color combination with anyone else at the table and you get the ideal version of the deck, it definitely has one of the highest ceilings of any of the archetypes in this format.
Right, we've got quite a high ceiling here, to be fair. So black-green Delirium is up next. Let's take a look at that.
This is more of a mid-range deck. You're seeking to play a little bit of a longer game. You want big creatures, and you're keying off of the Delirium ability in particular. So you want lots of different card types in your deck and lots of ways to get those cards in the graveyard to take advantage of Delirium.
Up next is red-white aggression, and really, if you we saw Ryochi Tamada in the last round get very aggressive on Owen Turtenwell, but that's kind of easy against an opponent that doesn't get to do very much. How good is this archetype, Ian?
This archetype can be very, very good if you get a great version of it. It relies a lot on your mana curve. You want to deploy lots of creatures early and then have ways to back them up, either removal spells, combat tricks, or ways to pump up your whole team.
We mentioned that most of the archetypes flowed through from triple Shadows over Innistrad into double Eldritch Moon single Shadows. The one that doesn't, Ian, that is the big new mechanic, if you like, it was Emerge, green-blue. Let's take a look at that.
So this is using the new Emerge mechanic, which lets you sacrifice a creature on the battlefield to help pay for a large Eldrazi creature. And lots of these Eldrazi's have powerful enter the battlefield effects as well to help you get value compensating for the fact that you had to sacrifice a creature.
Decimator of the Province is just one of the most fun/unfun cards in recent memory. I love that
certainly
card
ends
so
games,
much.
I can tell you that.
It certainly does. All right, so there you are. There's our blistering tour of the draft archetypes for Eldritch Moon.